Well, the New York Knicks have parted ways with head coach Tom Thibodeau after the team's best season in a quarter century. Tibbs was with the Knicks for 5 seasons, making the playoffs 4 times, and had 3 years left on his contract. So was this the right move? Joining me now to talk about it is our dear friend John Schmeelk. John, great to see you again, and thanks for coming on.
Mike, always good to see you, man. Happy to talk sports with you.
So, John, Tom Thibodeau, who is easily the most mainstay and decorated Knicks coach since Jeff Van Gundy, who left after 6 seasons in 2002, the Knicks are currently perennial postseason contenders. So where is the logic behind this firing?
No, look, it's a fair question. And I think the way I phrase it to people is that Tom Thibodeau was not let go or fired because of past performance, because he took the Knicks out of a 20-year abyss where they were literally the laughing stock of the NBA. And he's basically gotten them to the playoffs and won a playoff series in the last 3 years. So it's not because he hasn't done a good job. Tom Thibodeau is a really good NBA coach. If you're going to hire him, you're going to win a lot of basketball games. I think why the Knicks did this was they're a little worried about future returns. They're not sure that he's the guy that can get them to that next level and, frankly, beat and compete with a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder and some of the other teams out west who are going to be really, really good moving forward. So I think that's the thinking. I don't think it's any individual roster move or playing time rotation thing that got him let go. Look, Tom Thibodeau is a guy that does things his own way. Like, he has an assistant coaching staff, but he just does it his way. And I think the front office would like somebody that could be a little bit more collaborative in taking their suggestions in terms of how to run the team and work with them a little bit. I think some of the players, Jalen Brunson probably not one of them, were kind of ready for a new voice. So I think you put all that together, they decided to make the move. As to whether it's the right one, I think that remains to be seen. The reason I probably would have kept Tom Thibodeau around is because there was not another surefire guy out there and available that I'm thinking, yeah, this is the move, clear upgrade, championship caliber coach. You know, Mike Malone's out there, but coaches very much like Tom Thibodeau does. So now the Knicks seem to be kind of creeping around, looking for a coach that's maybe employed elsewhere, get him out of his contract, which is a really dangerous place to live.
Well, who do you think the big names are that the Knicks will now go after? And who do you think would be a good fit for the team, in your opinion?
Yeah, look, I think the guys that they seem to be targeting, again, are guys that are currently under contract with other teams, which, you know, can be a real weird way to go because, frankly, other teams can just say, no, he's under contract, he's not leaving. And even if they do allow him to leave, then you have the concept of having to give them compensation to get that coach. And the Knicks do not have a lot of draft compensation to make a move like that. So that's the problem with the approach. Of the guys that are employed with other teams that they would love to get, the names that are out there, Ime Udoka with the Houston Rockets, who basically have already shot down that possibility. Chris Finch, the head coach of the Timberwolves, is another coach that have been rumored the Knicks would be interested in. I don't see why they would let him out the door. And then the third coach, and this is the one that I think maybe is a little bit more plausible because we haven't heard the door, shut by the team about the possibility yet, and that's Jason Kidd, who's the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. He was a point guard for the Knicks when they made the playoffs with Carmelo Anthony and won one round of playoffs that 1 year. He's obviously been a head coach of the Nets. He's been a head coach of the Bucks, an assistant coach for the Lakers. Now he's with the Mavericks. I would be fine with Jason Kidd. He got the Mavericks to the NBA Finals. I think he's a good head coach. All the drama that surrounded him early in his coaching career seems to have dissipated a little bit. But the Mavericks could just say no. And if they say no, there's nothing the Knicks can do about it. So if all of those guys who, again, are under contract with other teams decline or their teams decline that possibility, I think you're looking at if they want to go with the first-time head coach, which I would be surprised given this is a championship or bust type of team. Johnny Bryant, who was one of the top assistants for the Cavs last year, was a top assistant under Tom Thibodeau the 3 years before that in New York. Again, I'd be surprised. First-year head coach. Mike Brown is another name. You remember him. He brought the Cavs to a finals. He's been a good head coach in this league for a long time. That's another name of guys that are available that I think the Knicks might be interested in.
Well, how much of a concern is team chemistry now that they're going to have a new head coach next season who's going to replace a guy who led the team to 3 straight postseasons?
The good news is that Jalen Brunson's going to be here. What parts of the roster are going to be back, I think, is a little bit more of an interesting question. they're going to have to decide whether or not to give Mikal Bridges a contract extension. He has to be willing to accept that contract extension, with be about $44 million a year on average. Mitchell Robinson's heading into his final year of his contract. Do they decide to extend him? He's on a bargain contract, making, I think, around 13 or 14 for this upcoming year, but it's the last year. So those are two roster decisions the Knicks have to make. If Bridges refuses to sign an extension, I think you do have to entertain a possible trade with him. My guess is that he will sign that extension. I'd be surprised if he didn't. And then the third question for me, Mike, is Karl-Anthony Towns, right? This is a guy that was an All-NBA player this year. His numbers are impeccable. But the structural issue with the Knicks still remains, is that their two best players, Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, are both terrible defensive players. And it's hard to survive a bad defender, a point guard, and at center. You can survive a guard. It's hard to survive a big man. And then, well, do you want to move Towns to power forward, put Mitchell Robinson at center? That kind of throws your roster in flux. So I think when you talk about chemistry, you first have to talk about which players are going to be back, which we don't know. But I think if we get Brunson, Anunoby, Bridges, Hart, and those guys are all back in the building, even with a new coach, I don't think chemistry is going to be an issue because those guys are so comfortable playing together.
And John, I want to very quickly switch over to football and talk about Aaron Rodgers' next rung in the ladder. After two abysmal seasons with the Jets, he's headed to Pittsburgh. I personally think he's going to have a comeback year because that's just the luck of the Jets. Talent seems to skip that team. Are the Steelers a good fit for him at 41 years old?
And I think the Steelers are a good organization, right? Even with some bad quarterback play the last few years, they figured out a way to win 9 games, get into the playoffs. And I think Aaron Rodgers is certainly an upgrade over what they had last year. Is he the player he was 6-7 years ago? No, absolutely not. I think we're seeing Tom Brady as the exception and not the rule in terms of being able to play at your peak level into your 40s. I don't think it's common for other quarterbacks around the NFL. But I think it'll work. I think the Steelers will have a chance to make a playoff run. Are they going to be as good as the Ravens and the Bills and the Chiefs? No, I don't think they'll be that good. But I think he'll be fine. Arthur Smith, I think it'll be interesting how him and Arthur Smith, who's the Steelers offensive coordinator, kind of mend their two styles together and blend them, because I think they are somewhat different. And Aaron Rodgers always kind of wants to play his way on offense, and I wonder if he's going to be willing to adjust and do a little bit more of what Arthur Smith wants him to do, which is more play action pass, get the ball over the middle, things like that. So I think he'll have a good year. He will not be the Aaron Rodgers that was an MVP, back in the day, but I think Rodgers will certainly be an upgrade over what the Steelers had at quarterback last year.
Well, it's June 9th, and the NFL season will be here before we know it. John, thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll talk soon.
Always happy to talk, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Up next, one of Caldwell University's most decorated athletes in school history, Lauren Marks, joins us next. Lauren Marks will go down as one of the most decorated student athletes in the history of Caldwell University. She just graduated on a very high note, recently being named All-American in women's bowling. She joins me now to talk about her journey. Lauren, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So let's go back to the beginning. How did you first get introduced to bowling, and when did you, develop a passion for it?
I was introduced to bowling when I was 9 by my dad. He's a bowler. My grandfather was a bowler. And he started the first bowling TV shows back in the, I believe, 50s or 60s. And my dad taught me how to bowl, and I loved it. So I just grew up bowling.
Now, out of all the colleges out there, how did you land on Caldwell University? How did you decide that that school would be the best fit?
Well, I actually originally bowled at another school my freshman year and had a very negative experience, and I ended up leaving the sport completely. I didn't really intend to continue, but the Coach Ken, recruited me, and he was very nice and very supportive and ensured that I'll have a good experience at Caldwell, and I eventually decided I would like to give it another try, and he was very supportive. The team was as well, and it definitely was the right decision, for sure.
Can you tell me about your team this year? How did you guys do, and what was the team chemistry like between all the players?
Yeah, I loved the team this year. I mean, every year it's been great, but I really, especially this year. We didn't lose any seniors last year, so we got one new freshman, and she's great. So it was just definitely what I was hoping for. And the team did well. We didn't win the championships this year, which was definitely a goal because we won it the last 2 years. But it was definitely a successful year, for sure.
Can you talk about your coaching staff and how much of an influence they've been on you over the last few years?
Yeah, so we have Coach Ken, and he's a gold level coach, one of only about 30, I think, in the world. And he's excellent, of course, and he's the reason I'm still bowling in college. He's been really, really helpful. He's a professional bowler himself, so he's been helping me because that's the route that I want to take after college. And he's just a great bowler, great coach, and it's just a very relaxed dynamic on the team. I've seen coaches that are more strict, and a lot of the bowlers just seem to be more on edge. And one thing about our team is that everyone always seemed very calm and relaxed and having fun. And I think that that's what's so important.
What were some of the more memorable matches during your college career? Any stand out to you?
Yeah, definitely winning the championships. Last year, especially because it was a very close match at the end. The year before that was nice too. So definitely the championships last year and this year. And we did place first in a tournament a couple years ago. I believe it was the Golden Bear Invite by Kutztown. And that one was really fun because it was a whole field of, I think, 14 or 15 teams, really good teams. And we ended up in the championship match and we tied, had to go into a roll-off for 5 frames, and our senior needed to get a double and then 9 in the 10th frame for us to win by 1 pin. And that's exactly what she did. And it was definitely a fun experience for sure.
It's exciting. Now, I read that when you were just 15 years old, you bowled a perfect game at Hanover Lanes. I actually used to go there all the time as a kid. Are there any bowling alleys around New Jersey that are your favorites?
Yeah, Hanover's definitely one of them. I grew up going there. And I go to Rockaway Lanes now, and that's where our team practices. That's where Ken's pro shop is. And I love Rockaway. The staff there is excellent. And that's where I bowl leagues now, there in Hanover.
Now, I'm sure you have a lot of natural talent, but you obviously work very hard at what you do to walk away with all these awards you've earned during your collegiate career. What measures do you take to stay one step above the rest of the competition out there?
Well, one thing I definitely want to do more of, but I do this a little bit, is watching other bowlers, seeing how their ball reacts going down the lane. It's a lot of information that can be helpful. I want to start working on that more heavily, but that is one thing that I do. Just along with bowling a lot. I bowl in every competition that I possibly can, and bowling that often is just, it feels like I'm practicing because every day if I'm bowling in a league, I'm learning something. So just bowling as much as I can in as many tournaments, leagues as I possibly can has been helping a lot lately.
It's the way to do it. Now, is there a mindset or a work ethic that you apply to bowling that you also applied in the classroom and that you'll continue to apply in the real world?
Yeah, I love bowling, and anything that I love, it doesn't feel like hard or work to me. So I try to do something that I love in everything that I do. If it's a class, I'll take the classes that are interesting to me, and the projects within each class. I'm an artist and I love art, so I'll incorporate that into my projects. So as long as I incorporate part of who I am and what I love into it, then it just makes it really easy for me. It makes it so that I enjoy it and it just doesn't feel like I'm working.
And last question, I know you touched on this earlier. What are your plans post-graduation?
I plan to start coaching in bowling. I got my certification for that. And as I mentioned before, I love to draw. I'm an artist. So I work for Prismacolor right now, the colored pencil company. I'm an influencer for them. So I'll post drawings and videos of using their products, and they will share it. It'll become ads, and that's what I really like to do. So just a combination of drawing, selling my work, bowling a lot, and I'll be allowed to earn prize money now. So that's something that I plan on doing. And I'm looking to bowl in more professional events. I did 2 already, 1 last year, 1 this year. And it definitely went better than expected, being that it was my first time. So I want to do that more too.
Well, Lauren Marks, congratulations on a great college career. Thanks for coming on, and all the best going forward.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Coming up, Geoff Magliocchetti joins us to talk about the remarkable start of the New York Liberty. Stick around. The New York Liberty are capitalizing on their WNBA championship last year, starting this season with an 8-0 record. Joining me now to talk about their continued success is our basketball expert, Geoff Magliocchetti. Geoff, been a while, but great to have you back.
Mike, thank you for having me on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So let me start by asking, how similar is the team to last season, and what are some of the big off-season moves they made that seem to be paying dividends this year?
Well, obviously, you have the same headliners in store. The so-called Big Three, consisting of Sabrina Ionescu, Jonquel Jones, and Breanna Stewart. So that wasn't going to change at the top. And we see a lot of other familiar faces, a lot of Death Stars, if you will, contributing to the cause, including Leonie Fiebish, who leaped into the starting five. But there were several key off-season moves that were made with this group. They had to make some in the wake of losing Kayla Thornton to the expansion draft. Courtney Vandersloot, of course, returned to the Chicago Sky. Sloot, unfortunately, is out for the year due to a torn ACL, so we send our thoughts and prayers to her. Her Chicago Sky was, in fact, heading to New York for a Tuesday game, but that's another subject entirely. But in terms of the moves the Liberty did make, they made some key acquisitions this offseason, none of which have been more clutch than Natasha Cloud. Cloud has been a target of the Liberty's desires for quite some time now, perhaps ever since she did the impossible and won over a New York crowd as an opponent during the opening round of the 2023 playoffs. She and Sabrina Ionescu did backcourt battle together when Cloud, then of the Washington Mystics, visited as a 7th seed and took on the 2nd seeded Liberty, who of course were destined for the WNBA Finals, where they eventually fell to Vegas. But ever since that day, many have paired Cloud and the Liberty in hardwood fan fiction, and really, it's been a match made in heaven so far. Cloud's on-court tenacity, willingness to speak out both on and off the floor, have been a perfect match for New York and have really pushed this team forward in the early going. Just last week, Cloud had a plus-minus of 28 to lead everyone beyond Fiebish, who was at 30, and she has really pushed this group forward. Her stats have, kind of tailed off just a little bit after the opening week. She only averaged 6 points a game last week, but she also averaged 6 assists and 2 steals in that as well, in 2 wins over Connecticut and Washington. While those stats are relatively pedestrian from a broader standpoint, you could make an argument that Natasha Cloud is putting the V in MVP better than anyone on this group right now. But it goes beyond Cloud. The Liberty made sure to replenish their depth as well, because I think we've talked about this several times, Mike, when we've discussed both the Liberty and the Knicks. A supposed super team, the Liberty tried to stay away from that term. The Knicks, I wouldn't call a super team, but they do have a good amount of talent. A supposed super team is only as good and only go as far as your Death Stars, as your role players, take you. And the Liberty experienced that last year with Kayla Thornton leading the way as a 6th woman, with Leonie Fiebish rising from the bench. And they needed to replenish some of that depth with Thornton gone, with Vandersloot gone, with one of the starters, Benajelani Hamilton, out for the season with an injury. So they had to get up on that, and it's safe to say they've done so, and how. Isabel Harrison has worked her way into the rotation with an injury to Jonquel Jones. Just last week, in 2 games, Harrison averaged 8 points, just over 5 rebounds, and 2 steals, really working her way into that so far. Kennedy Burke has been called upon to take on a larger role, and she's mostly succeeded, averaging 9 points, which is 5th among WNBA reserves with a minimum of 5 games off the bench, and she's shooting over 53% for the field, which is tied with Natisha Hiedemann for the most among all WNBA's reserves, with a minimum average of 5 attempts per game. We're also seeing Maureen Johannes get back into the swing of things. Johannes, of course, long lauded by New York fans for her mastery on the court, for the SportsCenter top 10 worthy plays she puts through on a nightly basis. She averaged 66% from the field last week in 2 games, and perhaps best of all, from a Liberty standpoint, opted to turn down an invitation to play for France in the upcoming Eurobasket women's competition and stay with New York for a full season. Johannes did not partake in last year's championship run, opted to stay in France and focus on Les Blues Olympic run, which eventually yielded a silver medal in front of a friendly crowd in Paris. So she comes back. She's basically an addition at this point, even though she's one of the longest tenured members on the team. But someone else who has risen to the occasion has been Rebecca Gardner, who was technically on last year's Liberty team, but missed all of last season due to an injury. She had played just 2 games in the prior 2 seasons, but has come off the bench to do really well for this group. Hit all of her shot attempts from the field. I believe it was about 5 or 6 in the 2 games last week. Has really stepped up. Really stepped up to use her length and stood up to really be a defensive presence, especially as New York plans to navigate without Jonquel Jones, which, early indications are that the Liberty has avoided major medical catastrophe when it comes to Jones, who had to leave Thursday's game in Washington early. But, with these depth pieces, it's great to see that the Liberty have accounted for all assets of their starting lineup, for all roster avenues, and it's put them on a strong pace to an 8-0 start. And they, in Minnesota, last year's WNBA finalists, are pulling away from some pleasant surprises in Phoenix and Atlanta in the early going.
Well, I want to talk about their head coach, Sandy Brondello, next, who was named WNBA Coach of the Month for May. She's in her 4th season with the team, 8-0 so far this year, 32-8 in 23 and 2024. Those are the 2 best records in the history of the franchise. What is it about her approach that makes her so successful?
Sandy Brondello has been in so many high-profile, high-pressure situations, and she was perhaps the best name possible one could have had when the Liberty opted to go on this quote-unquote super team run. Coach Brondello has this experience with the Phoenix Mercury, took over a team that had, Diana Taurasi, Brittany Griner for a while, guided them to a championship in her first year. She also had humble beginnings with this group, taking over the 2022 team, one she had just faced off in the playoffs against as during her final days at the helm of the Mercury. But Brondello has this team, she's really expressed a certain message that I think has stood out to me in this early going. She has told her players to quote, be you. Nothing changes in this large realm of heightened expectations, of big plays, of let's go raise another banner. Be you, she has told her players. She has told Natasha Cloud that it has worked brilliantly so far. She has told her franchise faces in the big 3 of Jones, Ionescu, and Stewart. Be you. And it's working so far. And Sandy Brondello is actually on the precipice of some Liberty history at this point. She's about 5 or 6 wins away, I believe, from passing Bill Laimbeer on the New York Liberty's all-time coaching wins list. She would move past him to go into number 2. Richie Adubato is the all-time leader on that list at 100. So when Sandy picks up her 101st win, which will likely come this season at the Liberty's current pace, she'll become the all-time winningest coach in Liberty history. So many things could have gone wrong with this Liberty set right now. We've seen so many supposed super teams flail out, crash and burn. Look no further on the men's level with what happened to the Phoenix Suns, for example. They did not have the depth. They had the name brand talents, but now they had to break those up and start from scratch. This could have gone wrong in so many ways. Giving this super team, giving this prowess to maybe a first year coach would be, for all you Star Wars fans, it'd be the equivalent of giving an Ewok the keys to the Millennium Falcon. And what Brondello has done with this group has been extraordinary, and they have bought into her system. They have bought into what she's preaching, and they've bought into all assets of what she wants to accomplish. So it's been a strong hire for the Liberty, and we're seeing them reap in the benefits so far. 8-0, the best start in franchise history, and 3 away, I believe, from the best start in WNBA history.
Wow. Well, Geoff, I have to ask, their next game is against another Eastern Conference team, the Chicago Sky. They're off to a little bit of a rocky start this year. What are the odds the Liberty extend their streak to 9 straight wins?
Yeah, it's been interesting so far. I believe it was Rebecca Lobo, former Liberty legend, currently the top game analyst, does a great job with Ryan Rucco and Holly Burke, top game analyst for ESPN. She noted that the Liberty's what am I talking about? Quick start has been partly brought about, the Lynx too, as a matter of fact, by the fact that those 2 teams rank at the bottom of the WNBA strength of schedule at this point. Minnesota is 12th, the Liberty is 13th. And the Liberty themselves have admitted that, they would like to have some sort of challenge at this point. And, they've recovered from some early tests well. There was that 90-88 game in Indiana. The Mystics gave them a run for their money when John Quell went down. So, the Liberty can't fall into any trap games at this point. And again, to bring up Star Wars, it's a trap. It feels like that all over again with the Sky, who are 2-5 at this point, are coming off a 27-point loss to a Fever group that did not have Caitlin Clark, that did not have Sophie Cunningham, that did not have their head coach Stephanie White. And, they're also reeling from the fact, again, Courtney Vandersloot is down, out for the season. So, things will be on the Liberty side at this point. But they can't take any opponent lightly. One of the messages that Coach Brondello has really preached over her 4 years in New York is to not get complacent. New York on Thursday against Washington seemed to get a little complacent in that late going. They had a 16-point lead entering the fourth quarter. The Mystics, a young and spirited Mystics team who can play with a sense of healthy, reckless abandon, had that narrowed down to 4, I believe, by the final minute before some of the Liberty Step stars and their regular contributors like Stewart and Ionescu helped them pull away. They were outscored in the paint in that game 46-22. And when you have a persistent paint presence like Angel Reese in there, not to mention Camila Cardoso as well, that could spell trouble for this group, especially with question marks surrounding Jonquel Jones' status. An official status on her will be released later today for Tuesday's game. So Liberty cannot get complacent at this point. All signs should favor them right now and should allow them to get to a 9-0 start, but at the same time, they cannot get complacent. And there are players within the Sky organization that know this team well. Rebecca Allen, for example, felt like she was around forever, stuck with the Liberty through their Manhattan, Westchester, and Brooklyn tenures, was an unfortunate sacrifice in a way in the trade that acquired both Kayla Thornton and Jonquel Jones, has been a bit of a nomad at this point, but has since become a veteran presence in Chicago. Kia Nurse is another one, as is Michaela Onyenwere. They were also homegrown sacrifices that helped the Liberty get to this point and push things forward. Onyenwere was traded to Phoenix in 2023 in the deal that eventually acquired Leonie Fibish. So I think that, there are players in this organization that know the Liberty well, that know what makes them tick, and they'll be hungry to make a statement on both on both a big stage in Brooklyn and a national TV stage. The game scheduled for 8 p.m. on ESPN.
Great insight as always. Geoff Magliocchetti, thanks so much for taking the time.
Mike, appreciate your time and insight. Keep up the good work, sir. Thank you for having me on.
It's our pleasure. Well, that's it for this week's show. I'll see you next Monday. For all New Jersey sports and news, head over to ONNJ.com.